Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we will delve into the deeply tragic escalating war between Brooke and Katie Logan, and the terrifying reality that their cyclical sibling trauma might just push Katie's fragile heart to a fatal breaking point. Notice the lighting in the Forrester Creations executive office. It is always that same sterile, golden hour glow, a perpetual afternoon that never quite descends into dusk, casting long, dramatic shadows across the designer furniture. I watched Brooke Logan standing by those heavy glass doors in recent episodes, her silhouette framed against a Los Angeles skyline that has not changed in decades, and I felt a profound, suffocating weight settle into my chest. Let us be honest about what we just watched. We are not merely observing a corporate dispute over a fashion line or the intellectual property of a family name. We are witnessing a slow-motion psychological execution. There is a haunting sameness to the way Brooke crosses her arms, the slight condescending tilt of her chin, the familiar cadence of her breathless outrage. It is a posture we have seen 1,000 times before, directed at 1,000 different perceived slights. I find myself wondering if anyone else feels this strange ache when they look at the screen. I have aged. The world outside my window has shifted, fractured, and rebuilt itself time and time again since I first began watching these characters navigate their glamorous, tragic lives. My own life has seen the birth of new eras, the loss of loved ones, the quiet, terrifying realization of my own mortality. Yet, here is Brooke Logan, trapped in an eternal Sisyphean loop of sibling rivalry, having the exact same argument about the exact same insecurities she harbored 20 years ago. Time in the world of daytime drama is a terrifying illusion. It moves forward only in the accumulation of trauma, never in the acquisition of wisdom. We must diagnose the pathology of what is happening between Brooke and her younger sister, Katie. To simply call Brooke annoying or petty would be a gross understatement. It would be a fundamental failure to understand the sheer, terrifying depth of her arrested development. Brooke is a woman who has spent her entire adult life defined by the gaze of men, primarily the patriarchal figures of the Forrester dynasty. She has been the muse, the scandalous ingenue, the ultimate eye candy, the undisputed queen bee of the boardroom and the bedroom, but what happens to the queen bee when the hive begins to look elsewhere? What happens to the muse when she demands the respect of a creator, but lacks the fundamental emotional maturity to build something of her own, without tearing someone else down? She looks at Katie and she does not see a sister. She sees a mirror reflecting her own profound inadequacies and the terrifying march of time. Katie is doing what Brooke has always secretly craved, but never quite managed to achieve on her own solitary merit. She is commanding absolute, unadulterated respect. Katie is building a fashion house from the ground up. She is securing the secret partnership of Eric Forrester, the ultimate patriarchal validation in this universe. A validation Brooke believes belongs exclusively to her. Katie is standing in front of the press, beaming alongside Bill Spencer, not as a scandalous conquest or a pawn in a love triangle, but as a formidable intellectual equal, and Brooke simply cannot endure it. It dawned on me today, sitting in the quiet of my living room, long after midnight, that this show is actually a horror story. It is a beautifully lit, impeccably costumed narrative about people who are fundamentally incapable of psychological growth. Brooke's current spiraling is not about the name Logan. It is not about the use of Eric's designs or the protection of the Forrester brand. It is about the terrifying realization that her little sister, the one who is supposed to remain the fragile, sickly, overlooked sibling forever, has outgrown her. Brooke is completely neglecting her own duties at Forrester Creations because her actual full-time occupation is the relentless maintenance of her own fragile ego. To see Katie thrive is for Brooke to experience a psychological death. And what of Katie? Let us pause for a moment and truly consider the sheer, crushing weight of what this woman has endured in the mere span of 6 months. The narrative throws trauma at these characters with a casual cruelty that borders on the absurd, expecting us to simply digest it and move on to the next commercial break. First, there is the staggering, grotesque revelation regarding her son, Will Spencer Jr., accidentally impregnating a serial killer. I must confess the profound cognitive dissonance of watching such a plotline unfold. We are asked to accept this hyper-melodramatic soap opera hyperbole as a simple matter of family stress. But beneath the glossy surface, think of the maternal terror, the absolute chaotic dread of realizing your child is eternally tethered to a literal monster. That alone is enough to break a human psyche. Then there is the whirlwind reunion with Bill Spencer, a man who has broken her heart so many times in so many devastating ways that the organ itself must be composed entirely of emotional scar tissue. Bill is a force of nature, a man who offers the world but demands the soul in return. Katie took him back, navigating the treacherous exhausting waters of his massive ego, only to be unceremoniously fired by her own sister at Forrester Creations. The cruelty of that dismissal was not just professional. It was a deeply personal surgical strike. It was an exile. It was Brooke reminding Katie of her place in the hierarchy, attempting to force her back into the box of the lesser dependent sibling. Now, Katie has taken on the monumental crushing stress of starting a new company from scratch. She is pouring her lifeblood into Logan, defiantly refusing Brooke's demands to abandon the name. The name itself is a profound battleground. What does it mean to be a Logan for Brooke? It is a brand synonymous with her own seductive power, a weapon she used to conquer the Forrester Empire. For Katie, it is a birthright she is finally claiming for herself, a declaration of survival and independence. But the cost of the survival is steep, and the toll it takes on the physical body is something the show treats with a terrifying voyeuristic glee. We cannot discuss Katie Logan without discussing her heart. It is the most potent, devastating metaphor the show has ever produced, and yet it is also a terrifyingly literal ticking clock. Longtime viewers like myself carry the ghost of Storm Logan with us every time Katie appears on screen. We remember the blood, the unimaginable sacrifice, the desperate, violent measure taken to ensure Katie's survival. She is walking around with her brother's heart beating in her chest. That heart has failed her before. It has deteriorated under the immense crushing pressure of betrayal, of postpartum depression, of the relentless emotional warfare waged by the people who claim to love her most. The body keeps the score. The mind can attempt to compartmentalize the trauma of a serial killer pregnancy, the sting of a sister's bitter betrayal, the overwhelming pressure of launching a new corporate empire, but the heart cannot be reasoned with. The heart simply pumps the blood, feeling every spike of adrenaline, every surge of toxic cortisol. And now the spoilers tell us that the warring women are set to have another heated confrontation. Another shouting match. I watch the previews and I feel a profound sense of melancholic dread wash over me. I am watching a woman being pushed toward the edge of a cliff by the person who should be pulling her back. I know exactly how this scene will play out. I can hear the dialogue before it is even spoken. Brooke will burst into Katie's office, her voice trembling with that familiar, self-righteous indignation that she wears like a shield. She will accuse Katie of theft, of disloyalty, of leveraging the family name to steal her thunder. Katie will stand her ground, her voice tight, her breathing becoming shallow and rapid. The camera will push in tight on Katie's face. We will see the subtle wince, the hand drifting slowly, instinctively toward her chest, the sudden, terrifying realization that the air has grown thin. Will an ambulance have to be called? The question hangs in the air. A voyeuristic promise of tragedy that makes me feel sick to my stomach. And this is where my complicity as a viewer becomes almost unbearable. I am sitting in the dark, watching a woman be bullied by her sister to the point of literal heart failure, and I am waiting for the dramatic payoff. We are being emotionally manipulated by a team of writers who simply need to fill 18 minutes of airtime before the soap detergent commercials. And yet I am genuinely moved. I am moved by the tragedy of Katie's relentless, exhausting struggle to simply exist outside of Brooke's suffocating shadow. Think about the profound existential grief of this dynamic. Brooke Logan is willing to push her sister to the brink of death over a fashion line. She will not stop. She cannot stop. Her pathology demands that she remain the center of the universe, even if that universe collapses into a black hole of grief and cardiac monitors. If Katie ends up in a hospital bed, surrounded by the sterile hum of machines keeping her alive, Brooke will weep. She will weep beautifully, her tears catching the studio light perfectly. She will fall into Ridge's arms and tell him that she never meant for this to happen, that she loves her sister more than anything. But she did mean for it to happen. Not the heart attack perhaps, but the submission. Brooke wants Katie to submit. She wants Katie to fold up her ambition hand over the Logan name and return to being the lesser pitiable sister. The hospital bed is simply the ultimate form of submission. It is the place where Katie is once again weak, dependent, and easily controlled. It is a terrifying realization that Brooke's love for her sister is entirely conditional upon her sister's inferiority. The moment Katie stands tall, Brooke perceives it as an act of war. I find myself thinking about family, about the invisible jagged tethers that bind us to the people who hurt us the most. Why does Katie engage? Why does she not simply walk away, change her number, and build her empire in silence? Far away from the toxic reach of Forrester Creations, because the trauma bond is cyclical. To walk away is to admit that the family is broken beyond repair, that the sisterhood is a lie. Katie fights Brooke because, on some tragic cellular level, she still believes she can win her big sister's respect. She still believes that if she is successful enough, powerful enough, Brooke will finally look at her with pride instead of venomous envy. But I suppose I am asking too much from a daytime drama. I am asking for a psychological breakthrough in a medium that relies entirely on psychological breakdown. The show cannot afford for these women to heal. Healing is quiet. Healing involves boundaries and therapy and walking away. Healing does not require an ambulance rushing through the streets of Los Angeles with sirens blaring, and so the war must escalate and the women must suffer. Let us look at the men in this scenario, for they are entirely complicit in this tragedy. Bill Spencer, beaming in front of the press, proud of his reunited wife, puffing his chest out as the supportive partner. Eric Forrester, offering his legendary designs, playing the benevolent paternal patriarch. Ridge Forrester plotting with Brooke, enabling her worst impulses, and validating her irrational jealousy. The men in this universe are so often the catalysts or the facilitators for the destruction of the women, yet they remain remarkably unscathed. They stand on the periphery watching the Logan sisters tear each other apart, occasionally offering a handkerchief to wipe away the blood or a checkbook to fund the next battle. Bill's support of Katie is genuine, I believe, but even his support is inadvertently weaponized in this war. Brooke sees Bill standing beside Katie, and it is a stark reminder of her own past with him. It is a reminder that Katie has secured the loyalty and the vast resources of a man Brooke once commanded. Everything in Brooke's world is viewed strictly through the lens of her own desirability and dominance. Katie's success is not just a professional threat. It is a profound insult to Brooke's lifelong strategy of surviving through the adoration of powerful men. Seeing Bill champion Katie's intellect and business acumen is a dagger to Brooke's vanity. As I sit here, my screen illuminating the dark room, I am struck by the profound loneliness of Katie Logan. She is surrounded by people Bill will depress, the models draped in Eric's silk, yet she is entirely alone in her battle for her own identity. She is carrying the weight of a massive new corporate endeavor, the bizarre and heavy trauma of her son's horrific entanglement with a murderer and the relentless, battering ram force of her sister's unhinged jealousy. It is a medical miracle her heart has not given out already. The physical toll of emotional abuse is a subject we rarely discuss with the gravity it deserves in the context of entertainment. We treat shouting matches on television as sport cheering for the best insults and the sharpest slaps. But the human body does not know the difference between a physical attack and a psychological one. When Brooke screams at Katie, Katie's nervous system goes into fight or flight. Her blood pressure spikes. The transplanted heart, a foreign organ kept alive by sheer medical brilliance, and a daily cocktail of immunosuppressants is forced to work overtime. Every cruel word is a physical blow to her cardiovascular system. Brooke is quite literally bullying her sister to death. And the most chilling part of this entire narrative is that Brooke genuinely believes she is the victim. In Brooke's warped, narcissistic mind, Katie is the aggressor. Katie is the one stealing the family name, stealing the iconic designs, stealing the spotlight that Brooke feels she has a divine right to occupy. This is the absolute hallmark of a true narcissist. The terrifying ability to inflict profound, life-threatening damage while genuinely believing you are the one bleeding. Brooke has convinced herself that her cruelty is merely self-defense. I close my eyes, and I can already imagine the inevitable scene in the hospital. The harsh, unforgiving fluorescent lights replacing the warm, golden hour of the Forrester office. The rhythmic, terrifying beeping of the heart monitors. The doctors in their white coats whispering in hushed, grave tones about stress levels, cardiac strain, and the threat of organ rejection. Brooke will pace the waiting room, wringing her hands, seeking endless comfort from Ridge. She will make Katie's medical emergency entirely about her own suffering. How could this happen? She will ask the universe, completely oblivious to the fact that she holds the smoking gun in her own hand. This is the grief of outgrowing a piece of media that refuses to outgrow you. I want to reach through the screen and shake them. I want to tell Katie to walk away to save her own life, to realize that no fashion line is worth dying for. I want to tell Brooke to look in the mirror and confront the terrifying hollow emptiness that drives her relentless jealousy. I want them to break the cycle. But they cannot hear me. They are trapped in their beautiful, tragic, high-definition terrarium, doomed to repeat the exact same mistakes until the end of time or until the network pulls the plug. And what of the name Logan? It is at its core just a word, a collection of 5 letters. But in this fictional world, it is a talisman of immense power. Brooke believes she owns it because she was the first to weaponize it. She used the Logan name to conquer the Forrester Empire, to seduce the patriarchs, to establish herself as a force of nature. Katie is trying to use the Logan name to build something entirely different, something of her own. Something independent of the Forrester men's validation. Brooke cannot allow this because if Katie succeeds, it proves that the Logan women are capable of more than just seduction and scandal. It proves they are capable of true creation. If Katie succeeds, it renders Brooke's entire worldview obsolete. Brooke has built her entire existence on the premise that a woman's power lies exclusively in her ability to be chosen by a powerful man. Katie is choosing herself. She is stepping out of the shadows and declaring that her intellect is worth more than her sister's sex appeal. That is the true source of Brooke's spiraling. It is not a business rivalry, it is an existential threat to Brooke's core identity. The impending ambulance is not just a medical emergency, it is a narrative inevitability. When the psychological tension reaches a breaking point, the body must take over. The body must fail so that the mind can finally rest. Katie's heart will give out because it is the only way she can escape her sister's wrath. It is a tragic, biological surrender to an unwinnable war. Her heart will falter because it is the only way to make Brooke stop screaming. I think about Storm Logan often when I watch these scenes. I think about the gun, the desperation, the absolute chilling finality of his sacrifice. He died so that Katie could live. He put a bullet in his own head and gave her his heart so that she could experience the fullness of life, so that she could watch her son grow up. And now, Brooke is systematically destroying that ultimate gift. Every insult, every shouting match, every petty corporate sabotage is a direct insult to Storm's memory. It is a desecration of the very heart that beats in Katie's chest. Does Brooke think about Storm when she looks at Katie? Does she remember the blood on the floor? I highly doubt it. Brooke does not have the capacity for that kind of deep, empathetic reflection. She is too consumed by the noise of her own ego. She sees only what is immediately in front of her arrival, a threat. A sister who refuses to stay in her designated place as the tragic, pitiable background character. As the week approaches and the spoilers promise us this heated, potentially fatal confrontation, I find myself bracing for the impact. I know I will sit in the quiet of my home, a glass of wine in hand, and I will let this cyclical trauma wash over me once again. I am a voyeur to their destruction, bound to them by decades of shared history and the strange comfort of familiarity. I will watch them tear each other apart, and I will feel that familiar ache in my own chest. Perhaps that is the true underlying horror of the soap opera. It holds up a mirror not to the characters, but to us, the audience. It asks us why we are so endlessly fascinated by the repetition of human misery. Why do we find comfort in the sameness of their suffering? Perhaps it makes our own lives, with all their unpredictable chaos, mundane struggles, and genuine growth, feel a little less terrifying. We watch them fail so that we can feel better about our own survival. Or perhaps we are just waiting, hoping against all rational logic for the moment when someone finally breaks the cycle. We are waiting for Katie to look at Brooke, not with anger, not with defensiveness, but with profound, devastating pity. We are waiting for Katie to realize that she does not need Brooke's respect because Brooke does not even respect herself. We are waiting for the moment of true liberation. But until that day comes, the war will rage on. The shouting matches will echo through the impeccably designed halls of Forrester Creations and the sleek offices of Logan. The stress will compound, layering itself over the trauma of serial killers and firings and betrayals. The Storm's heart, Katie's heart will flutter and skip and struggle to keep the rhythm of a life constantly under siege. So we wait for the sirens, we wait for the tragic collapse, we wait for the tears, the frantic paramedics, the dramatic apologies in the sterile waiting rooms, and the inevitable reset of the board. The Logan sisters will survive this battle just as they have survived all the others. But a piece of Katie's heart will be lost forever, chipped away by the very person who should have protected it. And I will be here staring at the screen in the dead of night, mourning the women they could have been if only they had been allowed to grow.